today is a Q&A, and I don't know what number Q&A it is because I forgot to put that down there. But I did get a question where somebody had, I think they emailed me saying they were looking to see if I had a video on herbs and whatever they can do to help with fingernails. A lot of the nutrients that you can take internally, or herbs or foods that will help strengthen your fingernails, are the same things that will help with your hair growth or just hair in general, having healthier hair. So, yeah, those of us who garden a lot, we're constantly washing our hands, and because then you got to come in, or you're handling your chickens, got to come in and wash your hands immediately. And then you're going to get your hands in the bread dough or whatever it is you're doing that day. You're constantly washing your hands, and that does take a toll on your fingernails as well. So something I don't always think to do is, you can always rub a little oil in them a couple times a day, maybe in the morning, maybe at night before you go to bed. And I'd highly recommend using the oil, the hair growth oil. You could rub that in there, that infused oil, because you're going to have a lot of those same herbs. Or if you've added like rosemary, essential oil, and that kind of thing, sage, anything that's good to help with hair. If you've added that into your infused hair growth oil, that's also going to be helpful. Just rub that into the nail and as far down in there as you can, like all around the skin and stuff. And that should help. That's going to condition the nails, and it's going to be natural. You don't have to apply any crazy stuff. I also recommend stop wearing nail polish if you're wearing nail polish on a regular basis, because that's not going to help. That's just going to make your nails more unhealthy. When you're a busy person using your hands all the time, it's pointless to do nail jobs like that anyway. But that doesn't mean we can't try to take care of our fingernails either. It's still nice to have them look decent. But I think I might have also linked to my video on hair growth, so helping hair to grow naturally, to encourage hair growth. So anything I mention in there is going to be good for your nails as well. But I'm going to focus on a couple of specific things. And one of that is going to be gelatin, or like your bone broths. So whether you're taking a gelatin, like a supplement, like I highly recommend a grass-fed beef gelatin. I have a lot of that on hand. You can even make your own gummies. I have old videos on making gummies, but it's that gelatin that's really good for fingernails. And I'm sure a lot of you remember growing up hearing this a lot, eat Jell-O, it's good for your fingernails. Well, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Jell-O, but you can make your own gelatin and make it healthier just using juice and beef gelatin, and make your own. Like I said, you can make it like gummies, or you can make it more like Jell-O. Gelatin is excellent. Bone broth is excellent for helping with nail and hair growth. And the other big thing I recommend, this is stuff you're going to take internally, is silica. So that can come in the form of, like right here, I have some dried horsetail that I collected a couple of years ago from down by our piece of property right next to the creek. And I have a video on horsetail, which I did not link to in the description box, but in that case, that would be something you'd want to make a tea out of, because horsetail is very good for hair growth and nail growth and for your bones because of the silica content that it has. In fact, it's so high in silica that when you dehydrate it, you got to be really careful about, once it's dry, that silica that it contains can get very powdery. So you got to be careful about when you go to put it into your jars and stuff, because it can make kind of a cloud, and you really don't want to breathe it in. It's totally safe to take internally, but you don't want to breathe it in. The other thing, if horsetail is not available to you, is Dietimmacous Earth. A food grade Dietimmacous Earth, up to a teaspoon per day. But typically it's always best to start even smaller than that when you first start taking Dietimmacous Earth. Maybe a quarter teaspoon, half teaspoon, work up to a teaspoon a day. Some people take more. I don't personally recommend more than that, but I just mix it in with water, sometimes coffee, some cold coffee, or leftover herbal tea, and I'll just take a little bit and mix it in there, swish it around really good, and then just drink it down. I do the same thing with eggshells. A lot of times I'm taking both simultaneously. So, Dietimmacous Earth is excellent. It's excellent for helping to detox the body, clean out the heavy metals. It's very good for your gut health and kind of scrubs everything out in your digestive system. And and then the silica is excellent for all those things that I mentioned. Now, I do believe I linked to the video on the Dietimmacous Earth. Now, in that video, at that time, I was talking about how, just like with anything, you got to listen to your body, pay attention to what it's doing. And I had at least one or two different times where I was taking Diatomaceous Earth on a regular basis, and I noticed a really odd smell to my urine that wasn't right. Now, I stopped taking it and the smell went away. Now, I've been taking it on a fairly regular basis without that same issue. So, I wanted to bring this thing up because I've had so many people come into that video, even though it's 2, 3 years old. It's actually getting popular again right now, and try to tell me, well, that's because you're detoxing. You should have kept taking it and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, no. While that is a possibility, I had been taking it for a week to 2 weeks before that started. So if it was just from detox, I should have noticed that sooner. And because of the type of smell it was, that told me it was probably just a little too much for my digestive tract because it had a very kind of raw sort of smell. I'll just leave it at that. I'll just say it wasn't right. Now, again, like I said, I haven't noticed that this time around. And I want to come back to the fact that even if these people are correct, don't listen to that kind of advice. If you know something's wrong, because I have never, only a couple different times I've taken Diatomaceous Earth have I had my urine smell like that. Stop taking it, it quits, it goes away. So take a break from it a while, come back. Now, I've never noticed my urine ever before and smell like that. So that tells me there's something definitely wrong. And it was a right thing for me to do, to quit for a time, give my body a break, get back into it again. And that goes for anything. If you notice any symptoms of something kind of newish that you've been doing for a couple weeks, maybe even a month, and now you're noticing some symptoms that just don't seem right, or you notice them right away, it probably means you should stop and don't listen to people's really bad advice when they tell you it's detox. I'm not saying that certain things don't ever mean that your body's trying to detox because of that, and that's why you're noticing some of this stuff. But it very well could be detoxing, but not for the reason you think. Not because it's actually working, but because your body's trying to tell you that you need to stop taking that. So it's just like the whole thing about people ingesting a lot of essential oils. That was the really big thing being pushed by certain multi-level marketing essential oil companies claiming they're the only brand you should ever take internally. No, it's not true. And so you had people that were putting it on, they were doing the diffusion and making capsules and taking them daily, like handfuls of them. Then they started having rashes, their hair was falling out, they were starting to have all kinds of health issues, but being told that, well, keep doing it because, that's just your body detoxing. No, it's not. Well, it is. I always say, no, it's not, but then I turn around and say it is. What your body's doing is trying to get rid of all the excess essential oils that you're taking that are doing harm to your body. So that's why I bring that up again, because if you go watch that Diatomaceous Earth video, you're going to hear that part, and you might have that same thought. Well, it's because you need to detox. Nope. It's because your body's detoxing. No, it's because it's too much. It's too much for my body, and I need to stop. So, yeah, while I understand the premise, I get irritated when I see people do that, because you may be encouraging somebody to keep doing something that could possibly cause them very serious harm. And same with you. Now, let's move on to a couple other tips and questions. So somebody was commenting about how they were helping, I think it was a family member, go through like their cupboards of, their food storage. and looking at what things were still good, what things needed to be thrown out, and what things simply needed to be rotated. Well, they pulled out the baking powder that this person had stored for like 2 years or more and found out the baking powder was no good. So baking powder is really only 2 main ingredients. You've got your baking soda, your sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, and your cream of tartar. Those are the 2 things that make up baking powder. Now, if you're store buying it, it's going to have some added ingredients, which is oftentimes where you get the aluminum, though a lot of companies have stopped using aluminum. Why was that in baking powder to begin with? Not baking soda. Baking soda has always been, always will be aluminum free. It was an additive to put into the baking powder to prevent clumping. And here's why. Because cream of tartar is an acid and baking soda is a base. So you know what happens when you combine baking soda with vinegar, which is an acid, a base and acid, what happens? You get a reaction. Basically, that reaction is still going to happen with the 2 mixed together, which is why you get a good rise using baking powder, because once it's been wet down, you're going to get a reaction. However, when they're combined in storage for a long time, those 2, even if they're still both dry, they basically counteract each other. They make the other one ineffective. So that's why baking powder goes bad in storage. As far as it's not that it spoils, it just becomes useless as baking powder. So you could probably use it as a cleaning agent, but that's it. Because both cream of tartar and baking soda are good for cleaning. So you could use it for scrubbing tubs, toilet sinks, and whatever if you wanted to, or even a stain remover, I'm sure. So I stock cream of tartar and I stock baking soda, and I keep them separate. I only combine them when I'm going to bake with them. So on my counter, I keep a jar of baking soda and a jar of cream of tartar right next to each other. A lot of times I'll just use half and half, depending on what I'm making. But I believe the ratio is for a tablespoon to equal a tablespoon of baking powder is 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Though a lot of times I just use equal parts and get the same result, especially if I'm making cookies, because a lot of times cookies will have baking powder plus baking soda. I'm like, okay, so I'll just use equal parts. If you want to pre-mix your baking powder, which I don't recommend doing unless you're only doing it in small amounts at a time to have enough to maybe get you through a week, a month, or however long you think. I would say no more than a month. Then you can add some kind of starch to that will help prevent clumping. So I recommend like organic tapioca starch or organic arrowroot powder, kudzu, any kind of starch like that. The starch will help prevent the clumping. So what you do is, I think if I remember correctly, it's when let's say you're making a whole cup of baking powder, 1 part baking soda to 2 parts cream of tartar, you're going to add a tablespoon of a starch to that. Then another tip, actually, it's a tip that people give me because they don't know that I already know this tip, and that I actually have a video out on why I don't do this. You'll hear a lot of people and you'll see a lot of people show you that, guess what? If you have the right kind of blender, you can take the blender blade, the whole, whatever you call it, that sits at the bottom of the blender, the part that you screw on with the blade and your gasket, and you can fit it to a regular mouth jar. This is absolutely true. And then you can take the jar, so you put it on your jar, and then you put the jar in there, and then you can just blend stuff right in your jar. Yes, you can do that. And years ago, I did do that a few times. And then I stopped doing that. I don't recommend it. So like I said, this is so prevalent, people talking about this. And some people probably never, ever had a problem with it. And so they're going to keep telling people, you can just do this, or maybe they've only done it once, or maybe they heard it and say, oh, you can do this. I saw so-and-so do this. Yes, I know you can. I don't recommend it. And here's why. Especially if you're blending anything that has any kind of fat or greasy substance in it at all, any kind of liquid, I don't recommend doing that with. You have to remember that just because something fits on something doesn't mean that it should be used that way. So even though it will screw on, it's still not made to go with a jar. And no, not all blenders will work that way anyway, but even the ones where it fits on there perfect and work perfectly and works fine, I don't recommend it. So if you have anything that's got even just a little bit of grease in it, a little bit of anything that's going to be slick at all. Now, you might be fine for powder substances. I just personally don't recommend it at all. But what can happen, and trust me, I know this from experience. It happened to me twice, and then I quit. What can happen is because it might have that little bit of slickness to it, it can cause your gasket, your rubber gasket, to get sucked up into the blender because it's the fit, even though it screws on good, it's still not tight enough to prevent that from happening. And then your gasket is destroyed. Thankfully, gaskets are fairly cheap. I don't know what they are now, but after that happened to me twice, I bought a pack of 10. Just to make sure. And I probably will never, ever need to buy any more gaskets for my blenders again. But yes, that's not what it's made for. Even if it fits, it's not made for that. So I don't recommend it. Anyway, a lot of people will talk about it. That's fine. But you could be destroying it one day. It might just happen that you're going to destroy a gasket, and depending on what you're blending up, you'll probably have to throw that out too, because you might have pieces of rubber gasket in it. Ew. Okay, so there's that. I got a couple more things. Somebody asked me. No, somebody didn't ask me. They told me that I should offer in-person classes. Now, before I started my channel, or right about the time I started my channel, I was kind of considering possibly doing this here. I've got this big room, which is one of the reasons I considered it, because I still have this big room. It's my ex dance studio / martial arts studio. That's why it's such a big room. However, I live in a very small, remote town. I know what it's like to try to do classes for adults. I've done it before. I've done dance classes for adults. I've done ladies self-defense classes a couple of times, and decided, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I had better business working with kids. Parents didn't have a problem getting their kids to class most of the time, but getting adults to come to a class, and you're setting aside your time, and they may or may not show up with no notification. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to set aside my time to have one or two or nobody show up. It's not worth it to me. And then especially now, it's the same reason I do not have a physical class is the same reason why I don't write a book. One of the same reasons. It all has to do with time. Oh, somebody else was asking me, this is about chickens. So somebody was asking me, they said, they're getting chickens. It's all new thing. They got a coop. It sounds like it's pretty well built, and they got a chicken run, and they were wondering if they should still shut their chickens in the coop at night. Well, my personal thought is always going to be yes. But on the other hand, a lot of it's going to depend on how solid is your chicken run, because and what kind of predators do you have? If they're just, it sounds like she's got bird netting over the top, so hawks aren't an issue. But what you have to worry about is at night. You have to worry about your night animals. So your nocturnal ones, like raccoons, and I think weasels. So anything, weasels, I think I'm correct that weasels will go after chickens. And weasels would be even worse than, we don't have a problem with those around here, but they would be worse than raccoons because they could squeeze through anything. And raccoons are very, very tenacious. And we have raccoons out here. And they will go as far if they're able. Remember, they practically have hands like we do almost. And a friend of mine that lives up on the far side of town, she's got kind of like us. They're doing the whole homesteading thing in just a little 1/3. I think it's about the same size as our lot, shy 1/3 acre. And she's had chickens for years. They got a pretty nice coop built, but they've had raccoons actually pulling the boards off the side of their coops. Raccoons are tenacious. So no, I would never intentionally leave the chicken door open, because even though I've got the enclosure, even with the enclosure fairly well covered, I know they can still get into that enclosure and then go through the chicken door. And then, because the chicken coop is under the old playhouse that Patrick had built for the boys, we one time saw a raccoon trying to get into the playhouse and see if it could get into the playhouse and then get down to the chickens that way. It wouldn't have been able to, but still, they are very tenacious. So I just say, yeah. And raccoons, what makes them even worse is a lot of times they'll just go through and they'll kill every single chicken, and just let them go to waste. Sometimes they may eat the breast out of it and then leave the rest. But I know a lady who had her daughter in dance for a couple of years, went out one morning to find every single one of their chickens slaughtered by raccoons, and they didn't eat much of them. They're very wasteful creatures. So they might be cute, but they're not always cuddly. You cannot trust them. We had one year we had raccoons running around that were stealing all my grapes. And I came out at night. I was out there because I thought I heard something. This is before I realized we had raccoon problems. This is before we had the chickens, thankfully. So I'm glad this lesson happened before we got chickens. And I go out there, and if you guys have ever seen any of my gardening videos where I show the grapevines and how they grow on a beam that goes all the way around our deck. And so they were running. I saw and heard movement, and finally I look, and there's one of the posts. There's a raccoon hanging on it and looking dead at me. And I got closer because I was trying to figure out, what am I looking at? And it hissed at me. Raccoons will attack you, and they can be rabid. You don't want raccoons around. You see a lot of people, oh, they're so cute and cuddly and feeding them. And some of them, maybe they do make okay pets, but do not trust raccoons. If you've never met that raccoon before, stay away from it, because it will attack you. They are very vicious, and they will kill your chickens. They will utterly destroy a whole flock of chickens. Anyway, there's my thoughts on that. Yes, I think no matter what, just to be on the safe side, I would shut the chicken door every night. Now, there's been a couple nights I forgot and left it open. I shut the gate to the enclosure, but that's not going to keep the raccoons out. Thankfully, they're not hanging around here all the time. They just once every few years, they might just show up out of the blue. And then another question, one more question I got was, somebody asked me, they came across the video, which I think was based off of a live that had published 4 months ago on my conspiracy theories versus conspiracy facts. And I'm not sure what their intentions were, because they never said anything more. They simply asked me, how do you feel about this now? So if anybody's wondering, I don't know why my thoughts on, as that video was about, would change in the past 4 months, and they haven't. Now, I think I did link to that video in the description if you would like to know what it's about. I'm not even sure if this person actually watched and listened to the whole video. Listen to everything that is said if you want to know my thoughts on conspiracy theories, conspiracy facts, and understanding there's a difference between the two. and understanding where I'm coming from, as one who was once so heavily steeped in conspiracy theories that it was making me crazy pretty much. I was constantly upset and angry. And basically it just comes down to you can't allow that kind of stuff to totally control your life, because it's not going to make you a better person. It's not going to put you in a better place. Use some of that to say, okay, I can make this change and that change to help counteract this or that. But there's some things you can do nothing about. You can only do the best you can. And some things are nothing more than theory. And some of it is flat out craziness. Some of it's real. Even there's stuff people are still denying to this day, even though it's come out very clearly that this really is happening and this is real, and even being admitted by government authorities, and people are still calling them conspiracy theories. That is so irritating. It's like, have you not been paying attention to anything? That was all of the points, all the questions that I wanted to cover today. Anyway, so I love you all. Hope you enjoyed being here. I really enjoyed you being here and being here with you, and that's a lot of being here's. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week. Thanks for coming in. Take care, and God bless. Love y'all.